Welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Head of Performance at Aston Villa Football Club, Michael Watts. Hi guys, welcome to episode 40 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. So today we have Michael Watts from Aston Villa on the phone. Just before I tell you what's going to come up on the podcast today, I just want to say thank you for the great support getting to episode 40 of the podcast. So today we talked to Michael about keeping players on the pitch, so keeping players fit and what he does to ensure that happens. Using GPS, which was, as I say in the discussion with Michael, a big part of the Seattle Sounders Sports Science Conference. We also look at dealing with and presenting data and off-season and pre-season programs. So I will keep this very short because it's a great episode, Michael, and one that I was very privileged to see over in Seattle. So we discussed a few of the things on top of what was discussed over there. But before I go any more, here is the chat with Michael Watts. Okay, hi guys, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. So today I've got a speaker on from the Seattle Sounders Sports Science Weekend that happened last week. Met him over there, and it's Michael Watts, who is the Head of Performance at Aston Villa. So heard Michael speak over there and was really interested to get him on from what he had to say over there. So welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Hi Rob, thanks for having me on.
No worries, mate. So just before we get going, do you want to give us a bit of a background, a bit of information on your experience, your education, what you're currently doing?
Yes, yeah, no problem. So probably a bit of an unconventional approach to being where I am, really. I was doing a business management degree. This is going sort of way back, 2002. And then one summer I ended up going out with a friend to America to coach for a company called Pro Excel. So we just did the 6-week summer camps, and I just got an appetite for coaching and being outside. So I came back, and there was an opportunity with David Lloyd's as a fitness coach, and I applied for the job, and I took it, and then started working at David Lloyd's. Whilst doing my degree. I was committed to my degree at that time, so I went on and completed it. From there, I sort of started to build my philosophy, which was sort of heavily embedded with the NESM's approach to training, their performance exercise and corrective exercise. And just through that job, really, I met a guy called Kev Paxton, and he was at Sheffield United, and he told me that Sheffield United were looking for a fitness coach to go out and work with their Chinese team, which was an opportunity I thought I couldn't really pass up on, so I took it. It was initially a 3-month contract, and I just thought to myself, well, 3 months I got there, and whatever happens, I could come back and continue doing what I'm doing. And then 3 months turned into a year, and a year turned into 2 years. And then before I knew it, I was being offered a job back with Sheffield United to take over at the academy there. So I headed back. As is professional sport and football, things soon changed, and the head fitness coach left, and in came Dean Riddle, who I know you know, and who gets mentioned a fair bit on these podcasts.
He does pops up a lot.
He gets everywhere, does Dean. And Dean was great for me, because it was, although I'd done 2 years on my own out in China, it was almost 2 years of not almost knowing what I was doing, working in a professional team with a first team, sort of learning as I went. Made loads of mistakes, but probably just because of the culture I was working in and the team I was at, sort of got away with it a little bit. Also, while I was out in China, started doing a little bit of work for the under-19 men's national team, which was great. So the opportunities were really good. I even got offered to go and work with the women's Olympic team, but I'd come back to Sheffield, and I decided that really that's why I wanted to come back, and I committed to Sheffield, and I saw that out. And then whilst I was at Sheffield, I went back to university and did my masters at Sheffield Hallam, and I did that in sports science. I did a strength and conditioning pathway there, so that was really helpful for me, because really my education background to that point was more of a business. So looking at the business side and then moving into the sports science. Then started to do my sort of in-house qualifications, so like the FA Fitness Trainers Award, baller weightlifting, SAQ, all those sort of things. And then I got a job offer to go to Norwich City as the first team fitness guy, to which I couldn't pass that up. They were in the Championship at the time, and they'd just bounced up from League One to the Championship. Joined there and had 3 great years at Norwich. Unbelievable experience with promotion, and great city, great club. And then the opportunity came to go to Aston Villa, big club. I'm from the Midlands originally, so I'm from Derby. And then I really could not pass that opportunity up. Unbelievable opportunity to come in as head of performance. So took the opportunity, been there for 2 years. Obviously the FA Cup not so long ago was an absolutely amazing experience. And about 18 months ago as well, I started my own performance cycling company. Like, I've got a big interest in cycling, so I started that up, and it's opened my eyes up to more endurance athletes rather than intermittent or team sports, so completely different. And along the way, just doing other little bits and bobs in terms of education. So the ISAC body composition course, also looking at doing the TRX stuff, got into that quite heavily. So the suspension training and the RIP training. So I'm always looking to develop and continue my education. There's a few more things in the pipeline this year as well. And also, I was lucky enough to also become a part of the Nike, the trainers network as well. So do a little bit for them from time to time, answering questions on their hub, as they call it. And also a few weeks ago, just out in Portland, doing a little bit of work based around pre-season. So it's been an interesting journey to this point. I don't see it as finished by a long way. Sort of just feel like really I'm just getting started and sort of cementing that philosophy I have around training and experience. Really just pulls and pins it all together. So in a nutshell, that's where I'm at really, Rob.
Sounds good, mate. So there's tons of questions I want to ask you just off the back of that. So you mentioned your philosophy early doors. How did you go about, did you actually create it and write it down and go through and, kind of systematic thought process, or is it just kind of developed over time? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, it sort of develops over time. The NESM, and I did that when I was a fitness coach, personal trainer, and it always stuck with me, sort of how strong the fundamentals were of that, and how practical it was really. And at the time, obviously, you're working with general population, and you feel there's probably more to this than what I can be offering them. And I always saw like the NESM as really like performance work for professional athletes. And then as you go through your career, you gain your experience, you do more and more qualifications, you do more study at university, and you start to get that philosophy. But I think what is good practice to do and worth doing is actually starting to write down your philosophy and almost have it black and white. What do you believe in? Why do you believe in it? and almost underpin it with a little bit of either research or a little bit of evidence as to why you feel it works or why it doesn't work. Like, come across plenty of people who have said to me, like, yeah, it's worth writing down your philosophy, and you think to yourself, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but it's something that I've done, and it's something that I've done pretty recently. So with sort of 10 years professional experience and 2-3 years working as a fitness coach, personal trainer, I've only just sort of done it in the last few months, really, and it's been a really, really good process for me, and it's made me question certain things that I do, and it's made me question why I'm doing it. And I'd say to any fitness coach, any sports scientist, anyone working within sport, have a philosophy and write it down and question why you do things, and if you're not sure, find the answer why you do it.
So how have you broken that down? What is it in sections? Is it, you know what I mean? How is that structured?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I thought was, right, what's important to me and what do I feel works? So we do a lot of preparation type work within the football club, and then thinking, right, what is preparation work? So and how do you design a bespoke program for someone? So really looking at movement, that'd be one element of it. How do the guys move? Can you improve the movement, and what does the movement mean? And then moving on from movement, you're looking at strengthening. How do you strengthen the guys? In what modality do you strengthen them? In what environment do you strengthen them? Because when I first started football, I thought all the strengthening should be done indoors and within the gym. But as you start working the sport, you actually see that you can start doing strengthening work and even movement work actually on the field as part of your warm-up, rather than just being a general warm-up. You can start to put things in. So I think that's an important consideration as well. And then also, obviously, football, a coach once said to me, and it always stuck with me, it's actually a running game. So how do you condition, and how do you get guys fit, or how do you keep them fit, or how do you increase their fitness? So probably the three main areas that I'd look at is preparation stroke movement, strength, and then also some sort of metabolic conditioning.
Cool. I know we're 10 minutes in and we haven't discussed anything what we're going to, but that's fine. So one little last thing is your cycling stuff.
Yes.
So just talk to us a little bit about what you touched on before with regards to the cycling.
Yeah, so the business really was born out of people just asking me for help. Obviously, just knowing my background, knowing what I did, people would then start asking me, "Oh, can you help me? And can I get fitter, or can I get stronger?" It's completely different sport to obviously football. You condition people in a completely different way. There's a lot more variables that you can control, and obviously with the use of power now, it makes it a lot easier rather than just working with heart rate and getting used to people working with power. I think it's important. It is quite an expensive thing to use. They're not cheap to install a power meter on the bike or have a power meter on the turbo, but definitely well worth getting if you're sort of serious about your conditioning. And just built up a few clients now. I try not to take too many on because obviously the priority is the day job and the football club. But I do find it's probably helped in a way in increasing my knowledge, some of the things I've learned and some of the things that I've come across. We do use at the football club on the watt bikes. We use them quite heavily. So when it comes to a little bit of testing or a little bit of conditioning, we profile the guys on the watt bikes and then we know the power zones rather than just sort of blindly going in. Obviously, heart rate as a variable, there's a lot of things that can influence that: illness, stress, fatigue. Whereas power's power, and you can't escape the fact that if you're doing 150 watts, it's 150 watts, or if it's 300 watts, it's 300 watts. So it's opened my eyes really to a different training modality and different metrics that you can use in order to condition people, and also trying to find different ways that you can you can condition a cyclist compared to a team sport athlete. So is there a crossover? Maybe a little bit in terms of rehabbing, but they're two completely different sports. But it's been a good process and a good learning process for myself.
Cool. So do you want to tell us about how you profile your guys at the club with regards to their power using the watt bike?
Yeah, so it's something really we've only just introduced. We got the watt bikes last season, and then we've been having a play around with them. And the watt bikes, they have pre-programmed testing that's already set within the bikes. And one of the tests that you can do is a 6-second peak power test. We started playing around with it. We got the guys on and we just sort of got some peak power outputs off them. What the watt bike allows you to do as well is look at a power to mass ratio. So if you've got a guy who's maybe a bit slight, 70 kg, and then you've got a guy who's heavier, 95 kg, you can actually have a look at these ratios rather than just saying peak power for player A is 1,400 and peak power for player B is 1,600. It actually gives you that power to mass ratio. So that's something that we've started to look at, and it's good for the guys because it gives them a reference of where they're at as an individual. Because obviously, it's obvious if you've got a bigger guy, he's going to produce more power. That's obvious. But what does that mean in terms of power to weight ratio for an individual? Because you can see the small guys in the Premier League, little guys, little players, and they're really, really explosive. But people might say, oh, he's maybe not strong enough or he's maybe not powerful enough. But when you can compare some data and say, well, actually, his power to weight ratio is better than the bigger guy who stands next to him, it's quite an interesting thing to see. And then we've done a little bit of a study within our academy, just really having a look at the correlation between obviously jump height and sprint, sort of 10, 20 metre, 30 sprints. That's pretty common practice within football, something I've come across a lot. And we thought, right, sprints are pretty invasive, so I don't know if you get many first team that will do sprint training in terms of testing that 20-30 metres. High risk of maybe a hamstring injury or some sort of kind of muscle strain. So we just had a look, and the correlation between the guys who are producing the peak power, the highest peak power, were the guys that were also running the fastest over the 20-30s and the guys that were jumping the highest. So things like that are pretty useful in terms of profiling. So if you know a guy is producing a peak power, then is there a need to sprint test him unless the coach or unless somebody really wants to know how quickly a guy can run 20 metres in. So it's been really helpful for that. We're also playing around with a 30-second anaerobic test, which is a bit similar. Maybe people at university did the Wingate test where it's just a 30-second max effort. So we're looking at that one as well. The interesting thing about that is a fatigue index. So every 5 seconds, the watt bike will just record power, and then the fatigue index basically looks at the highest peak power and the lowest, and it'll just give you a fatigue index in terms of percentage between. So just as an anaerobic test, quite nice to see sort of how quickly the guys fatigue, and then if the guys are injured, we started looking at a 3-minute aerobic test where we'll get them on there. They just go for 3 minutes, much as they can. And then that will automatically profile the power zone. So then when we're working the guys and conditioning them, if we want to be doing some zone 5 work, we know exactly what power it should be, or zone 6. And that just started to bring us away from saying, right, you need to be in this heart rate. Obviously, if you're doing the higher end of stuff, like your zone 6, your zone 7, like that those sort of Tabatas, then the heart rate really, it doesn't matter what the heart rate's doing, because you're never going to be able to spend long enough in that work zone to get the heart rate up towards maximum. So that's where power really plays a massive part. So we're using it quite heavily at the moment. We'll be using it in pre-season. I think it's a good tool. We're going to try and conduct a little bit more research within house and have a look at ways we can use the data and have a look at ways we can develop it. But I've been really impressed with it as a bit of kit. I know it's used quite heavily in rugby. Obviously, cycling use it. So yeah, we'll continue to research and look into it.
Sounds great. So one thing that came across from your little talk last week and other talks at the same time, it seems obvious, but the key thing as part of your job or our job as a whole is to keep players on the pitch. The importance of keeping your best players available for the coach. So what kind of things are you implementing at the club to go about that and tick that box?
Well, the most important thing really is that a player can play. And if you start to work back from that and think, right, this player needs to be available to play, and then what is required for this player to play. And I think the game's definitely moving now to a more individualised approach. You might have a guy who can't train 4 days a week. So how do you keep him fit? If he's not going to train and do actual loading, so the actual training will cause a load, which we'll see from like GPS, then how are you going to keep him fit? Unloaded wise, is it going to be bikes? Is it going to be swimming? Is it going to be strength work in the gym? So it's designing this bespoke program for each player really, and making sure that he's available for the manager, for the coach to be selected. I think the preparation work's really important. We're looking at next season, just developing that a little bit and trying to work more of an individual approach rather than a sort of a group carpet bomb approach. So that's something we're going to change. And then the other thing, obviously, is recovery. Post-exercise, I think is really important. I spent a little bit of time with Kelly Sturrat out in San Francisco. Unbelievable guy. We're speaking to him about sort of post-training recovery. He talks about sort of smashing up certain muscles, which probably to me and you is like foam rolling or trigger point work, but that was unbelievable, sort of some of the things he was showing us. And we also spoke to him a bit about prep work as well, sort of hip mobility. I don't know if you've seen his voodoo flossing as well, things like that. So little bits that you can introduce. Some things like that, maybe don't have the biggest scientific backing, but if it works, if it makes one of the lads feel good, I don't always see a problem with things like that. And then another thing really, which I think people do overlook, is the nutrition side, and also the sleep side. There was a great talk out in Seattle about how important sleep was, and it made me realise that really, if the guys aren't sleeping, then any other training that they're doing, whether that be the actual specific football training, whether that be gym work, whether that be recovery work, nothing has as much impact as sleep. And if you don't get that right, then basically everything else suffers. So I think basics, it comes back to that word, Rob, like we speak about the basics and getting the fundamentals right. Sleep, eat and train and try and do each as organically as you can. And I think it will keep you on that pitch longer, and it will keep you available for selection more often than not.
So again, just referring back to the Seattle stuff, again, it came across to me that people were quite aware, and you more than probably the rest of the guys, aware that this can become a bit of a Big Brother type scenario where things have been taken home to monitor. The monitor on the pitch, the monitor after training, the monitor before training. So when you talk about sleep, how are you going to kind of go about tracking that quality of sleep without being obviously too intrusive on certain players that may think that the monitoring is going to affect their contract or the playing, or that kind of scenario?
Yeah. I think we're heading into a world of where technology is almost becoming the forefront runner of everything we do. And for me, like putting sleep monitors on guys, seeing what the level of quality of sleep is it really necessary for every player? I don't think so. Does it have a place? Yes, I do. I think there's got to be some form of trust between coach and player. at the end of the day, these guys are adults. They're not. It's not as if they're kids. They do know. If you speak to a professional footballer, they are pretty well informed about most areas. It's not as if they blindly go through their career not realising the importance of sleep or the importance of nutrition. These guys do know. They are pretty clever guys. They're pretty switched on. They've been subjected to many different tests and many different styles of coaching. So their sort of learning process is quite big, really. And it's not as if they don't understand. And I think to start saying, right, I'm going to monitor your sleep. I'm going to monitor where you go with your wife. I'm going to monitor what you're doing at night. It can be a little bit invasive. If you start flagging a guy who's having a problem, maybe getting injuries, a lot of soft tissue injuries, or reporting that they're lacking a lot of energy, then that's where you might speak to the pro and say, right, I believe we can try and help you, and we can have a look into your sleep hygiene, as they call it, and we can use this to monitor you and see what's going on and try and help you. Then I think it does have a place, but I think we've got to be careful not to overstep the mark and just collect data for the sake of collecting data, or start being too invasive with players, because at the end of the day, they are a human being, and they are an actual person, and the way we treat them can affect their mindset. And I really think that mindset is important to how they conduct themselves around the training ground. A happy player is usually a more productive player. So there's definitely a balance. And again, I'll come back to that word. It's about that individualisation and creating a bespoke programme. If they need it, they need it. If they don't, then maybe best leave them alone.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So just moving on to another thing that was discussed a lot last week, which was GPS. So obviously you're using GPS down at the club. How are you using it, and what you're collecting? And more importantly, how is that data being fed back to coaches and actually used to develop training?
Yeah, well, we're really lucky. We've got a great guy down there who works our system, a lad called Tom Allen. When I arrived at Villa, he was already there, so I inherited him really. But he's very knowledgeable. He looks into how he can improve the system and how he can improve the software and sort of creating his own algorithm. So Tom feeds back daily to myself and the coaches, and looking at different variables. So variables we look at would be like a total distance covered in meters, high intensity covered in meters, the dynamic stress load, red zone, so the heart rate, metabolic power, and then HML, so the high metabolic load. So all these different markers we will look at in terms of intensity. We will give a colour coordination to and rate them from low to moderate, high, and then max, and they're all colour coordinated from green up to red. And we also scale them 1 to 5. This is something Tom's created, which is based on our match day. So really, we're collecting the data off pre-season. So there might be a little bit of drop off because obviously a pre-season game is not as intense as a Premier League game. But we will then rate everything from 1 to 5 in terms of volume, and then in terms of intensity. And then we also take an RP and see if that correlates with the intensity. So the volume is the averages, the intensity is per minutes, and then the RP is just a case of asking the guys how they feel. And that's given us a really good sort of visual reference point as to how hard the guys are working. And then in terms of putting that into a graph, just simple bar graph, you can plot your high intensity and your total distance, which is something we use quite regular, in order just to sort of track against a match on a Saturday and just have a look at in terms of the week. And then once you have that data, then it's a case of how do you present it and what's meaningful. And I think that always comes down to the coaches that you're working with, because they'll have their different ideas of what they want to say. And I usually find with coaches, they almost want one number just to say, just tell me how intense it was, or tell me how the guys are feeling. So they don't want to look through reams and reams of data. I think almost they just want to have one number. And that's the tricky part, because I think there's more going on maybe than just one number. But that's the trick we need to come up with as sports scientists or fitness coaches. How do we communicate with coaches who don't always have the same background as us? There's not too many sports scientists and coaches out there. But coming up with those figures or those numbers is really important. Something we're sort of developing and Tom's working on. We're trying to come up with almost like a one number just to sum it all up, but it's pretty difficult. But we're sort of getting there. I really like the 1 to 5 rating, and in terms of looking at that over a week or a month, you can start to add those scores up, and just a simple way of keeping an eye on volume and intensity. The single figure, I think there's probably more going on than just a single figure, really. I think it's probably too difficult just to pull out a single figure, but maybe we might find something, and you never know, Tom might come up with something that's a bit groundbreaking, and we start using that. So I think there's no wrong or right way. I think it just comes across as, what do your coaches want to say, and present it in a way that makes sense to them, really.
So all your stuff is based on a percentage of a match day, which is your pre-season?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
So the guys will be wearing their GPS and the heart rates within the pre-season games. Obviously, they tend to get more intense as you get further into the pre-season, and the opposition tends to get a bit better as well. They usually have that marquee game at the end of pre-season against one of the bigger European teams, and that's where we start to take our averages from, really, and set our thresholds against that. But we do understand, and we do realise that game is not the same as a Premier League game. There's always an increase in intensity, but we're not allowed to wear the GPS or the heart rates in games, so you have to reference it against something. I know something Tom will do during the season and training. He will start to adjust markers accordingly if he sees something that maybe doesn't fit right. But yeah, it's sort of doing the best you can with the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So obviously we're in the off season now, a couple of weeks to go before pre-season. So what have you sent your lads away with for the off season? And back to this monitoring Big Brother type conversation we were having earlier. Are you actually keeping up to date with what they're doing, or is it just kind of their responsibility and you expect what you expect? So we give them a programme to take with them. It's still a printed out hard copy. I think that's probably a bit dated, if I'm honest now. I think if there's somebody out there who fancies a chat about creating some software or an app or something like that, I think I would definitely be interested in speaking to them. I think that's the way it will be going. You see things like Training Peaks is something like I use with the cyclists in order of putting down programs and alerts to people's phones and where they actually can log the sessions that they do. So in terms of what we're doing, I think it is outdated. So yeah, we'll just give them a booklet and we'll set sort of almost interval training and a bit of strength training. We'll say to them, start off with a complete break, sort of 10 to 14 days completely off your feet, rest, relax, recover, recuperate, that sort of thing. Then we'll say go into a week of unloaded, so bike or swim, something where they're not running, and then we'll slowly introduce more of the loaded stuff where we'll say to them, right, go out and start doing some running, get used to load again through your body, start to introduce the strength stuff. We just give them more intervals, so we'll just say, right, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and do that 20 times. And these are the intensities to work at. Basically, run, jog, walk. So we try and make it really simple. So we don't send them away with any heart rates or any GPS or anything like that.
So it's just a case of making it really simple, making it transferable. So if you're saying 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, that can be done on a treadmill. It could be done running up and down the park. It could be running up and down the street. Any of those modalities that you want to train, you can do it as long as you work in the intervals right. So try not to be too restrictive, because what I've found in the past, if you say, right, I want you doing barbell deadlifts, and then I want you doing barbell squats, and then you need to be doing this exact exercise on this piece of equipment, then that's where you can start getting into, oh, well, I didn't have that piece of equipment, or I wasn't able to do that, because more than not, the guys will be on holiday. And you know what sort of gyms can be like when you're away on holiday. They're not always like these decent performance centres that we start to see pop up. They can just be sort of the worst room in the hotel with maybe one treadmill and a pair of 5K dumbbells or something like that. So just try and make it simple for them, but it's something we would like to develop. And as you say, on the monitoring side of things, there is some good tech out there, definitely some good tech out there. And I think it's going to have to change, and I think it's going to evolve. And I think it's that conversation of having with a player to say, we're not monitoring you because we're trying to catch you out. We're monitoring you because we want to help you. So all I do really is during the off season, I'll just contact the lads. I just text them, how you getting on? Everything all right? They usually come back to you, yeah, no problem. Had one of the guys come back to me today just asking a question, and you're just here to support them really. If they need the support, they know where you are. If they don't, then you just see them report back, and once we start doing a little bit of testing with them, then you usually get a good indication how much they've done or how much they've not done.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So when they come, how do you transition from the off season into your pre-season? So the last couple of weeks in your off season to the first couple of weeks in your pre-season. I know you said you've got like a testing day somewhere smack in the middle, but how do you kind of create that seamless transition? Yeah.
So first day back will be a testing day. We don't do anything too invasive or maximal, because obviously we're aware that the guys have been off and probably not been exercising as much. So I don't think you should fall into that trap of doing certain tests and then that being the benchmark to say, right, they're here, because as soon as they start training for 6 weeks, and then if you retest them, of course they're going to be fitter. So we try not to fall into that trap. So yeah, they'll come in. We get them like to come in 2 by 2, if you like, and they'll come in. They'll work together. They'll go through various screenings, various tests. Spend sort of an hour and a half just doing what we need them to do, and then off they go. And then they report back again the next day, or whenever the manager decides he wants them back in, which is already set up. And then off we go with more of the training side. So it's once you get into pre-season, it's just a case of gradually building volume and intensity, really, like periodization of football. People are sort of more aware now of you've got 5 or 6 weeks to get them fit, and you don't have to sort of absolutely destroy them in day 1 or day 2. So it's a gradual process now. The balls come out pretty early. They come out on day 1, which I think is a good idea. I'm not one who thinks that it should all be about running. I think you can get a lot of conditioning through the football, but I still think there's a place for what I call formal running. Sometimes you can't always get exactly what you want physically from small-sided games or technical. I think there still is a place for running, both physically and mentally. I think it can build a bit of a camaraderie and team spirit. The running, because it's tough, it hurts, and once you have guys who are running together and getting each other through it, I think you can start to see that builds that spirit. And then obviously the games come in as well. You usually find that players will start with maybe 30 or 45 minutes and then gradually build up 60 minutes and then 90 minutes. And that's a challenge, making sure that you get people with enough minutes under the belt, because there's only so many games and you've got quite a few players. And ultimately, they need the games in order to bridge that gap between training and match play. So yeah, it's a tough process, and it takes a bit of planning and it takes a bit of thought, but it's just that gradually increase volume, gradually increase intensity, make sure that lads are getting minutes training and minutes playing. I think the strength work's really important in pre-season. Recovery obviously really important, because you can get lads doing double sessions, which they're not always used to. So you've gone from in season single session a week, then you go nothing for off season, then all of a sudden they're back and they're doing double sessions, so it can be quite a shock to the system. And the most important thing is making sure that the guys train and play and hang in there. I know sort of if they miss one day, they're better off to miss one day than 1 week, because once they start missing training and they get into this cycle of deconditioning, you think if the lads are doing double sessions, if you miss a week, then that's 10 sessions that's going to be hard to catch up on, really. So it's really important that they stay in there and they hang in. It does get hard, and you do see them suffering a little bit, but that's what they expect, and that's sort of what they get paid for, and that's what they are conditioned to do, really. Like if me or you joined in for a week, Rob, I don't think would last too long, if I'm honest, because they are pretty special in terms of their physical capabilities. Like some of the guys you watch, like their aerobic capacity or their strength or their power or whatever makes up their physical prowess. Some of the guys are incredible to watch, and to see them up close, whether it be testing or training or actually playing, it's incredible to watch some of them.
You wouldn't believe how awful I was at pre-season when I played. Yeah, it was me and the keepers at the back getting abused. But anyway, just one last thing. One thing that came across in your talk in Seattle was the kind of brutal honesty of how it is to work in the Premier League, which I think, as we discussed while we're over there, I think was quite a bit of a shock to some of the collegiate guys and some of the guys in the States. I just wanted to know of any feedback you got after the chat, basically because obviously you mentioned about some compliance issues that you may get with a small number of players, and I think from looking around, that was a bit, like I say, a bit of a shock to some of these guys. What kind of feedback did you get after that? Did you get people coming up to you and asking you questions about, how you deal with these players? Was it shock, or was this just some glum faces that I was looking around at?
Yeah, well, I think the honesty comes. That's just the way I am, and that's the way I approach things. And I had a lot of people say thanks for your honesty, and it was really interesting. Whenever I see anyone present or talk, you get the guys who I think will give you like the theoretical world, and they'll give you this and give you that, and you just think, yeah, but that doesn't work. And when you get the guys who actually open up and share sort of the problems that you might come across, then that for me is more interesting. I think, I can't remember who said it, was someone over in the conference there, 20% of knowledge and 80% of how you manage it. And that's pretty powerful. You're dealing with guys who, as I said, are intelligent, that have been exposed to sports science and fitness for quite a long time. I don't know if you agree or don't agree, Rob. I think we're starting to have a little bit of a backlash against maybe sports science and maybe fitness, because maybe we've been a bit too invasive when we started in the industry. Maybe we collected too much data. Maybe we were asking too many questions. We had all this data, we had all this knowledge, but we never shared it and never did anything with it. And now players are a bit more reluctant to say, well, I don't mind giving you data, I don't mind doing testing, but please do something with it. And I think that's fair enough. I don't think we should just be collecting unless it's for a purpose or it has some kind of consent, like understand research like you might have to. And if you are researching, then I think it's important. And I think that's how we make strides within the industry. But just sitting on data and collecting it, I don't agree with. I think most managers and coaches will probably agree with me what I say there. Make it meaningful. If you're going to collect the data, do something with it. because that's the real world. And when it comes to compliance, I think you get better compliance if you speak to your players and you actually give them a reason why you're doing it and they can see why you're doing it. I can't reference what English players are like to American players because I've never worked with them. I can Chinese players. They were easy to work with. But that's probably a society thing. Like, yeah, exactly. But it's not to say that the difficult or bad people to work with, because there's some great guys that we work with, and sometimes the ones that challenge you are actually the ones that develop you better, because they'll ask questions and they'll say, why are we doing this or why are we doing that? And I actually find that those players that you work with, in a way, it's refreshing because it keeps challenging. It keeps you questioning your philosophy and keeps you questioning why you're actually doing things. So I don't mind being challenged by a coach or a player, because ultimately I think they have every right to ask why you're doing that or why you're doing that. That's fine. But yeah, maybe it did shock a few people. I think, I don't know, Rob, I don't know what high school or collegiate athletes are like compared to Premier League football players, but just to be honest, I think it is a good approach, and I think more and more people within the industry like listen to a few of your podcasts, and people seem to be getting more honest and open, and I think that's a good thing.
No, definitely, and I think the thing that you said at the start, which is one of the huge messages that I took away, was about the 20% what you know, 80% how you manage people, and I think that kind of summed up the whole 3 days for me. That you can collect all this data, and it was a lot about data, giving the right data to the right people in the right way, and I think that kind of spoke volumes about the whole thing, really.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%. And if you get people who collect data and you get these clever guys, these scientists, so they can sit on it, but they can't actually relay or communicate it, then it is pretty pointless.
Pointless, really. Absolutely pointless. So yeah, I mean, it just again amplifies how crucial communication is. And like I say, you can come straight out of university or do whatever you do. If you can't communicate with the kit man, as you know, the same as you communicate with someone on 80 grand a week, well, you're struggling, because you need to be able to do both.
Yes, exactly. Well, kit man in a different breed, Rob.
That's maybe a bit extreme, yeah.
Yeah, my good mate is a kit man at Norwich, but he won't thank me for that. But no, you're exactly right. You've got to be able to pitch to different people within the club, because even players are different. You get players that are completely different from each other. You get coaches that are completely different from each other, and one method of communicating with one coach or player might not work with another. So it is pretty tricky, but it's refreshing. It's a good challenge, and if you sort of shy away from that, then you're probably going to struggle. And as I say, just embrace it. If someone's questioning you, don't see it as a criticism against yourself. If you don't know the answer, I always just think you're better off saying, "Listen, let me find out for you, and I'll come back to you," rather than just sort of waffle on a little bit. And that's where I think players get annoyed, and that's where coaches get annoyed.
No, I totally agree. Cool. So what else have you got coming up? Obviously, you got the pre-season coming up, but where can people keep in touch with what you got going on?
So obviously pre-season that's cropping up soon. So that excited about that and getting back. You do start to get itchy feet. On a personal front, obviously the cycling business. Hopefully that will continue to grow a little bit. I work out of a little shop in Derby. They've been really good to me, and they're hopefully setting up a lab for me in the next few weeks, which will be nice. So if I can just plug the Twitter feed there, it's @lab_velo, so VELO. So sort of keep an update on there.
So is that a cycling shop, mate? Is that just a shop that sells bikes and things?
Yeah, at Lab Velo is my business,
Okay.
and the cycling shop's called Love Velo, and that's based in Derby. They sell sort of more higher end bikes, really bespoke, sort of great shop, and just sort of got talking to him, and then he was interested in the performance side, and he wanted to have a little sort of lab there where we can lactate threshold tests and ramp tests and movement screens and bring that to the cycling world. And I've worked with a few amateur cyclists and elite cyclists now, and hopefully that'll just grow and develop a little bit. So that's pretty exciting. Obviously the day job comes first, so it's a balance of not taking on too much really, and making sure that the full focus really is on Aston Villa, and making sure that the players there are well looked after. Looking at obviously introducing a few new things, and there's bits that you pick up when we're out in America. Visit a TRX, which was really interesting. Chris Frankel, I looked to build that relationship, and that's a form of exercise that really fits well within football. Works really well with our guys, so maybe try and develop that a little bit. And then just searching other little bits really around maybe a data management system or something like that. So still looking for that. I know there's quite a few bits out there, and I've seen quite a few bits, but not seen the one that I think will work for us yet. And then on another personal front, expecting my first child, so I'm sure I'm going to have my hands full there.
Jet lag, permanent jet lag.
Permanent jet, yeah. I've been conditioning myself to sleep deprivation with a jet lag, but yeah. So really exciting. Like I'm looking forward to the season beginning. Looking forward to developing the cycling a bit, and obviously looking forward to the new arrival as well, Rob. So
cool.
Loads going on, mate. Loads going on.
So what's your personal Twitter feed?
Personal one is at MCW _fitness.
Cool. I'll put a link to that on the site so people can jump on and follow you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's usually based around more general type fitness and what's going on really. And yeah, I want to try and start blogging a little bit more as well. I think that's good practice. Like something that came out presenting really is putting your ideas and thoughts up there for people to see can help develop you as well. So I'm going to try blogging a little bit. So if anyone has any suggestions or anything that they might want to talk about or might want to hear about, then I'm open to that. Like just more than happy to answer questions or write blogs on certain things. No problem.
Cool. Sounds great. Right, mate. Well, I've kept you for nearly an hour now, so I'll let you go and get back to sleep.
No problem, mate. Yeah. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed it. And
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I shall speak to you soon.
You will do, mate. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Rob.
See you, pal. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to episode 40 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. If you want to keep up to date with everything that's going on the podcast and catch up with previous episodes, you can go over to paceyperformance.co.uk/podcast. All the links mentioned in the episode with Michael will also be on paceyperformance.co.uk/40. You can always follow me on Twitter at PaceyPerform, and I'll let you know when new episodes are out and different things that are going on. I hope you enjoyed the chat with Michael, and I'll see you in episode 41.